Basic arts? Quinn read. Does this mean there are stronger vampire martial arts out there? This time, the tutorial was unlocked when Quinn had learned the vampire martial arts, so perhaps there was a tutorial skill related to it. Yes, Fex replied. These are only the basics. I can perform at a level above what I showed you, obviously, but I honestly wouldn't be good enough to teach them to you. If you want to learn some more, you're better off getting a real teacher to show you. While the two of them were busy practicing inside the private server, they were unaware of what was happening elsewhere in the game. Zombie P, winner. A few people in the crowd were currently watching a particular student play the VR game. Each of them had lost the matches, but found the fights a little strange, so they opted to watch the next few games. New match has been found. A new game had started, and once again, the student they had their eye on was going up against a level 3 telekinesis user. The telekinesis user had several black balls attached around his chest, while his opponent had no weapons at all. Standing on the opposite side was Peter. He didn't look like his usual self, as he was slightly disguised by the avatar. Although he selected a pretty basic default design that had a randomly generated face with a few scraps of clothing. The fight had begun. Peter rushed forward. At the same time, the telekinesis user threw out the metallic balls using his ability to speed them up. Peter, however, was fast and was able to dodge most of the incoming attacks, and the few that he couldn't, he knocked away with his hand. Eventually, one of the metallic balls came at great speed and managed to hit Peter in the center of his shin, smashing and breaking it in half, causing him to fall to the ground. The telekinesis user calmly walked over to Peter, thinking it was all over. He had taken out one of his opponent's legs, and no movement would mean the end. However, the others watching from the stand knew it wasn't the end for Peter. They had all thought the same thing while fighting against Peter. Suddenly, after a few moments, Peter was able to stand up again, as if the attack had never hit his leg in the first place. He immediately ran towards his opponent. Eventually, when he was close enough, Peter pounced on top of his opponent and widely swung his fists towards his head. There was no class and no style with Peter's attacks. It was like one of a wild animal. Winner, Zombie P. Each of the opponents Peter had gone against had witnessed his impressive regenerative abilities. Still, some people were suspicious, since Peter also seemed to have impressive strength and speed on top of his healing powers. As the game had ended just outside the VR pod, Logan was finally waking up from his nap. As he slowly opened his eyes and looked around the room, he noticed that Peter wasn't there. "Peter!" Logan said as he rushed over to the computer and immediately logged in. It was as he thought. Peter had not logged into the private server to play, but instead had logged into the military servers. Quickly, Logan brought up a log of Peter's past games, hoping he hadn't done anything to stand out. He had already received a few emails from admins, asking to look into the user ID of Zombie P, making sure it wasn't a hacked player, since there had been a few complaints made online. "I guess your fame online will be a short one, Peter. The world cannot learn of you just yet." With that, Logan forcefully disconnected Peter from the online world. However, it was a little too late, as some of Peter's amazing regenerative power videos had already been spread online. Meanwhile, in another military base, a certain group of boys had also managed to watch the videos that had been posted. "Did you see?" Sam asked. "Yeah. Looks like there will be a lot of interesting people at the intermilitary base event," Nate replied with a big smile. Inside the training hall in one of the military bases, Nate and Sam were training. They often went to other planets to support the base military in their endeavors. However, as of the moment, the second-year students were to remain at their bases for the time being, under the upcoming inter-base military event. It was an event that required all of the 8 military bases to enter. It was a competition among the bases. The military bases would compete to see who had raised the best and strongest students. The event was important for the military bases and their leaders, since they would often get more funding and privileges based on the performance shown during their participation. The two of them were in the room. Sam was reading a level 6 ability book that was placed on the floor. Sam had his eyes closed for a while now, meditating. All of a sudden, a burning sensation arose in his chest, promptly stopping him from what he was doing. The burning ache that Sam felt in his heart meant that he had reached his limit. Thus, pushing his body any further could be dangerous. Nate said with a cheery tone in his voice, trying to ease Sam's worries. "All we need to do is get you some good beast gear that suits your ability. Also, we can always work on your skills." Meanwhile, inside the school's IT room, Silver was currently standing above one of the school's staff members. The reflection from the screen displayed that his eyes had a slight red tint to them, meaning that he was under Silver's control. Right now, she was searching for the school files regarding a student named Fex. "Oh, you stupid little boy," Silver said out loud. The file was found, and it seemed like Fex had used his real name. Although this was good news for her, it wasn't long until the interbase military event, and she would be able to make her move to bring Fex home. "Hopefully you haven't caused too much trouble yet." It appeared like everyone was busy, dead set on doing their own thing. Because of this, Vorden found the situation a little boring. If he was left on his own accord, there were only two people who he could talk to, although they seemed to be a bad influence on him. "Hey, do you think we can trust her?" Rayton shouted as he asked. "We knew something was up, and it looks like we were right, working for Pure. Who knows what she's already told them?" "They could be after Quinn," Syl said while continuing to rock back and forth. "Guys, will you all just calm down?" Vorden hollered, annoyed by his companion's complaints. "What about the next portal outing?" Rayton queried. "What if she plans to make her next move then? We need to find her real goal." "Fine," Vorden replied, giving in to the idea. He knew firsthand that if he didn't do something, Rayton would continue down this path, and eventually he would get Syl worried. "Then I will go talk to Layla." Thus, Vorden went to the dorms to visit Layla. Upon knocking on the door, a female student answered it. The most prominent feature of the lady was her short black hair, with a fringe that cascaded her face, nearly covering the entirety of her right eye. Her name was Sia, and she was the third person who occupied Aaron and Layla's room. "Is Layla there?" Vorden asked. "Are you her boyfriend?" Sia said as she scanned Vorden's body from head to toe. "I'm guessing you two had an argument or something, judging how she's been since yesterday. Or maybe it was the fact that she found out her best friends were terrorists, but she's not here." This was the explanation the school had given, that 8 students had been found with connections to the group known as Pure and were taken to the dungeon as a form of punishment. "Look, if you want to find Layla, she's usually by the back of the building, sitting on the bench just underneath the large tree. She and Aaron often went there together," Sia said. With that piece of information, Vorden left without saying another word. As he turned the corner, he indeed saw someone sitting alone on a bench right underneath a tree. "Vorden, what do you want?" Layla asked in a rude tone. She had just lost her best friend, and the last person she wanted to see was standing right before her eyes. "I think we need to talk about whether or not I can trust you," Vorden asked. Layla interrupted Vorden. "I was in Pure this whole time before everything started. The only difference now is that you guys know about it. That hasn't changed who I am, and let me ask you, aren't you going around accusing me all the time? But what about you? Why do you care so much about Quinn?" At this point, Layla had stood up from the bench and was starting to inch closer to Vorden. "If she takes one more step closer to us, Vorden, and you don't do anything about it, I swear," Rayton said, his tone a tad threatening. "Shut up!" Vorden shouted as he grabbed his head. "Layla, I need to trust you. If I can't trust you, then I'm afraid of what will happen to you." "Then tell me, Vorden, what can I do to prove I'm on your side?" she asked. Fortunately, Vorden had prepared an answer to this question. "Let Quinn turn you into a vampire. That way, I know that you're on his side." Layla's anger bubbled at such a question. Why couldn't he do it as well? He could get turned too. And yet, despite wanting to ask such a question about why he couldn't do the same, she already knew the answer. It was the loss of Vorden's ability. His skills were versatile, which was a great help to them on several occasions. While for her, it didn't mean much. Her powers were quite weak, only being a level 2. "I want to go to Vorden, but it's too risky right now," she replied. "If I go off the radar, stop reporting to Pure and choose to be by Quinn's side, they could run an investigation. They would then look into me, send higher-ups, and then Quinn would be in even more trouble," Layla explained. "When the time is right, I promise I will be by Quinn's side." The school no longer searched for the missing students. After doing a sweep of the school, it looked like none of the students had seen Peter or Aaron. In the end, they deemed that the video that had been sent must have been true, and they were too late. With the help of Leo, they were able to gain access to the portal room once again. Leo was able to sneak Peter into the room, and with him, several of Logan's mechanical little spiders. Logan pressed a key on his keyboard. At the same time, in a different location, in the school's security office, a signal was detected. Haley soon came along with Faye to check who had made the signal. "That's one of the missing students!" Faye shouted as soon as she saw Peter. She had recognized him since she had dealt with their case files. "Quick, Haley takes him to the medical facility. We need to give him a full health checkup. This is the first bit of good news we have had in quite a while." Right inside Logan's room, Quinn and the entire group were standing with a smile, which soon turned into one of horror as they heard those words. "Hey, when have I ever messed up?" Logan complained. "It's pretty obvious that as soon as they find a student who has been missing for a while and comes back in tattered clothes from a planet that had suffered a Dalkey attack, the first thing they would do is take him to the medical facility." It was something the others hadn't thought about. They had all been too busy and focused on their problems. They didn't think this through. As they took Peter to the medical facility, Haley went ahead and ran a general check on Peter's condition. She hooked Peter up to a large, tube-like machine. The machine would show his internals and display his insides, as well as see if there was something wrong with any of his organs, including his heart. This was where Logan's ability had come to its advantage. Logan was able to fake a sickness and enter the medical facility beforehand. During this time, he had touched every machine available there. While doing so, he had taken control of the machines. "It looks like you're in perfect condition," Haley said as Peter lifted him outside of the machine. "Now I just need to ask you a few questions." Logan had come up with a backstory that was plausible according to the situation. It detailed how the Dalkey had attacked their group and he had run away, luckily escaping the fiasco. He traveled through the desert for many days, eventually reaching a shelter. The problem was, it was the wrong shelter. The shelter only had teleporters that linked to other planets, and none back to Earth or the military base, but he found out the shelter he had come from wasn't too far. He stayed until he regained his strength and purchased a map, leading him to the original shelter, and eventually returned to the military base. Once the questioning was over, Haley left Peter to be with a soldier, guarding him as he rested, while she went off to report to Nathan. "So, how is the boy?" Nathan asked. "Thankfully, he seems to be in perfect condition health-wise, but—" Haley hesitated. "But what?" Nathan replied. "It seems like his mind isn't all there. Sometimes his response was quite rigid, and there seemed to be a lack of emotion. Pio didn't have any of these signs before, although this could be due to the trauma of being attacked by the Dalkey." "That's great news," Nathan said. "As long as the student is fine, it'll be okay. We can inform his parents about the good news for now. Have him rejoin classes tomorrow." As Haley left the room, Nathan went to pick up the files on his desk as he read through them one by one. "An orange portal outing? What are they thinking?" Nathan said. It was late that night, and the others had left the room to go to sleep. Just before they left the room, Fex had spotted something on Logan's workbench. It was a square-shaped portable teleporter. While the others were busy saying their goodbyes while friendly chatting with each other, Fex decided to move closer to have a look. It looked like he had the square teleport device hooked up via some cables leading upward to the computer screen. "He can't be trying to crack the thing, can he? This is bad," Fex thought. As everyone headed back to their rooms, Fex managed to pull Quinn to the side just before they were about to part ways. "Just a little warning to you, Quinn. The device that Logan has been tinkering around with on his workbench, it's a portal leading back home. You need to do everything you can to stop him." Fex left after warning Quinn before he could even ask any questions. "What was that all about?" Quinn murmured. He then decided to carefully think about what Fex had said. By home, there could only be one place Fex was talking about. It was where the vampires came from. Still unsure whether or not that was somewhere on Earth or another planet, or at least a place hidden from the human eye. He understood that he needed to stop Logan before he figured it out. The only thing Quinn didn't understand was why Fex seemed so concerned. Quinn then thought of his first meeting with Fex. He mentioned something along the lines that he wasn't meant to be here. "If what you are thinking is along those lines, then I'm afraid the situation is worse," the system said. "Based on the boy's young age and at the same time, his great skill, it would be wise to assume he holds a high position in one of the vampire families. If he is not here on orders, then they will send others on his trail to retrieve him. We need to be careful." The next day, the first-year students were called into the assembly hall for a meeting once again. Nathan walked onto the stage. "Okay, I'm not one for speeches, so let's get to the point," Nathan said. "This year the military has decided to expand their operation and get more aggressive in planetary explorations," Nathan explained. "So, what does that mean for you guys? Well, instead of the normal green portal, you guys get to jump ahead and explore an orange portal instead." Hearing the news, the students suddenly broke into gossip. "An orange portal this soon? I thought they only did that with the second years. Why would they do this to us, especially after the Dalkey attack?" "Silence!" Nathan shouted. "Don't worry, there will be 2 sergeants sent out with you on this journey. Leo, head of the beast weapon class, and Faye." Faye then took over and walked to the podium. "You will remain in your teams of 5 while traveling in the larger group of 50. Each team will be given a certain device that would be used to survey the land and map out the terrain. The data recorded will be used to automatically create a world map and other maps for future use on the planet. More details will be explained once the devices have been given to you." The hall of students quickly shifted around, with everyone getting into the same groups they were in before. Quinn, Vorden, and Layla remained in one group. Peter, now known as Pio, had decided to come over to join Quinn's group. "So what do we do about the 5th person?" Vorden inquired. As Quinn looked around the room, he noticed once again that Fex was all on his own. Seeing this, Quinn shouted, "Fex, come, join us over here." Fex came rushing over towards the others. "I guess you guys realized how lame your group is," Fex said, his tone indicating that he was proud of himself. "So you immediately needed me to boost it up a level. Well, if you insist." Upon hearing that, an awkward smile made its way to Quinn's face. He merely wanted to be close to Fex, hoping he would eventually learn more about the vampire world. While everyone was huddled up in their groups, there seemed to be 3 stray students that had walked up to the front of the assembly hall, going straight to stand by Faye's side. As she looked into the crowd of people, she started to look at each of the groups. Every single one of them was already filled with 5 people. "You there, and you." She surveyed the room one more time, and her eye had managed to capture Vorden. "And you. You can head to those at the back," she said. Vorden was the one with the most knowledge in the group, and he was saying how it varied from place to place. The orange portal was amidst 2 stages. Once the whole planet had been explored, they would use the information that they had gathered to update its status to green or red. Just then, a voice echoed loudly within the hall. "Hello?" Sia said as she entered the circle. "You," Vorden replied, shocked that he saw Sia. "What are you doing here?" "Sergeant Faye has asked me to join your team," Sia explained. Right now, everyone in their team knew of each other's abilities. However, Sia knew nothing. If she was to join the team, it would only slow them down. Sia then looked at each of the members. "So I'm already acquainted with the haughty and puppy eyes over there," she said, referring to both Vorden and Layla. "But what about the rest of you?" Then she pointed at each one of them as she continued to provide them with nicknames. "Average Joe over there," pointing to Quinn. "Dead Eyes," pointing to Peter. "And—" When she got to Fex, she paused slightly. "Go on, then," Fex said. "Compliment me on my good looks." "Arrogant young master type," she said. Sia looked defeated and appeared like she didn't want to be in the group at all. Not realizing that they felt the same way, "Well, we better get to introducing everyone then. If we have to work as a team, I guess the first thing we need to know is about everyone's abilities, right?" Sia asked. When the question asking about their abilities arose, everyone in the circle was a bit hesitant to answer. "I don't have an ability," Quinn quickly answered. All the while, after seeing this, she quickly ignored him and moved on to the next person. Quinn was fine with this. "I already know Layla's, and most people learned about that pretty boy after the event with the second years in the assembly hall. That means I just need to know yours," Sia said as she looked at Peter. Peter then gave Sia a rather uncordial glance, since he wasn't in a great mood. What annoyed him wasn't Sia's attitude towards him, but her disregard for Quinn, his master. "I can show you firsthand if you want," Peter said, raising his fist. "Peter!" Quinn snapped. So Peter immediately put his fist down and went back to his master's side. "What the hell was that all about?" Sia asked in bewilderment. "Don't you think you should tell us your ability first before asking for ours?" Vorden questioned. "Well, my ability will be a little hard to explain, so why don't I just show you?" Sia looked at all the people in the group. At first, she would have tried using her ability against Peter. However, judging by how he acted, she didn't want to do that now. Out of all the people in the group, there seemed to be one target that stood out as the weakest. As Sia lifted her hand, smoke gradually appeared on top of her palms. The smoke was colored in the shade of blue that the skies had. It started to form a certain shape. Its body was similarly hued to the smoke. After a brief window, a pointed blade emerged on one end of the fully formed thin rod. The final product was a short spear, spanning half of Sia's height, made of animate smoke. Without warning, she looked towards her target and threw the spear. It flew through the air and managed to hit Quinn, dead in the chest. "Quinn!" Layla shouted. "Are you okay?" When the spear had made contact with Quinn, he felt no pain. Although he could feel the object piercing him, it didn't seem to have inflicted any physical damage. No bruises, scratches, or holes where blood could trickle. Still, there was definitely an effect. Part of his energy felt like it was being absorbed by the weapon. It was a similar feeling to when he was out in the sun, only a lot weaker. Finally, the notification sound was heard. "You have been affected by Spirit Spear. All stats have been reduced by 10%. "What did you do to me?" Quinn said, his anger evident in his voice that became a bit deeper. The others had never seen Quinn like this before, so they were stunned. Meanwhile, filled with rage, Quinn started to walk toward Sia. Right now, Quinn was unsure what Sia's skill was. All he knew was it had reduced his stats by 10%. If this was a permanent effect, then he would have lost a lot of hard work. "Is this guy really a level 1? Sia thought, as she looked into the anger that was swimming in Quinn's eyes. She wasn't sure if she imagined it or not, but she thought she could see the color of his eyes slowly starting to turn red. "Hey, Quinn, relax," Fex said as he jumped in between the two of them before Quinn could even act. He then leaned forward and whispered to Quinn, making sure his body and head were blocking Sia from seeing him. "Quinn, your eyes, they're red. You need to control your anger and calm down," Fex advised. However, as Quinn thought about how hard he had worked to gather those stat points, and them going away just like that, his anger started to boil again. "Spirit Spear has worn off. Stats have returned to normal." The spear that impaled his chest slowly dissipated into thin air, and the energy seemed to return to his body. At the same time, his mind was suddenly cleared along with his anger. "Hey, did you really think I would hurt you in front of all these teachers and students? It looks like I've joined a team of crazy people," Sia complained. "A support ability?" Vorden said. Sia simply nodded as a response to Vorden's query. "It allows the user to form spirit weapons in their mind. When this spirit hits its target, it can either act as a buff or debuff. When my ability hits, it is able to debuff the target for 5 seconds, and then the effect wears off. Because I'm only a level 3, though, the amount of time the spear lasts is only 3 seconds, and the distance I can throw the spear is quite short." The others didn't want to admit it, but having Sia on the team would be a great addition. Support-type abilities were greatly sought after. "Anyway, it looks like this group won't amount to much," Sia uttered. "So why don't we just meet up on the day of the portal outing? There's no point training together within the 2 days left, prior to the expedition." "I agree. Why don't we all do our own thing before the portal outing? It's been a tiring week, and I think some of us can do with some rest," Quinn said. Before the others could even say anything, Sia was already walking off. The assembly had ended, and students were told that, until the portal outing, they would have the next 2 days off. While everyone was busy doing their own business, Quinn had arrived at the VR gaming room. With the nanostick that had been given to him, he no longer needed to bug Logan. Accordingly, he headed to his room in order to use the private servers. "Now, let's see what you got. Tutorial video for skill Phantom Hit has begun." The VR room was the best place to practice, and now that he had access to Logan's private server, it meant Quinn could also practice his shadow abilities freely. The first thing Quinn was going to do was have a look at the new tutorial video he had unlocked after learning the vampire martial arts. "Phantom Punch tutorial." "Hello there," the blonde man in a cheery voice said in the video. "In my opinion, this is one of the most useful skills to have. But just a little warning, this skill seems to work better with beings with a high level of intelligence, namely humanoid creatures. When testing this against a beast, it has little to no effect. To perform this skill based on the system stats, you will need at least 15 points of agility and 10 points of charm. These are the minimum requirements. Now, as you increase your points into charm and agility, this skill will work even better. While in a fight, you will aim your punch in a certain direction to start. Before the first movement is made, your charm skill will take slight control of the user's mind. To them, an image will appear and make it look like the punch has continued heading in the initial direction. But in fact, this will be a phantom punch. While the user is dodging or trying to block it, the real blow will come from somewhere else. This skill works even better if you have high enough agility. You will be able to perform several phantom punches at once, confusing your opponent. But be careful. Just like with Daze, it has a chance of not working well. This is why I recommend you to increase your charm points when possible. He explained it by saying it should feel similar to when Quinn would use the Daze skill. He should gather that feeling again and try to focus it through his eyes. Then, using his strong will and the image in his head, he would be able to project a fist outward. This in turn would allow the opponent to see the same thing. After hearing the explanation, Quinn didn't think it would be too hard, but just practicing it, not using it against an opponent, he found out it was extremely difficult. If he projected thoughts to target the head and tried punching below, as soon as he thought too much about hitting the head, his fist would automatically hit upward. Still, Quinn wasn't the type to give up. As he repeated the move several times, he could slowly separate his thoughts and actions into two separate things. He didn't know whether it was because he was in the game or trying to split his thought into two, but he would often get headaches as he pictured himself using the charm ability while forcing the energy outward from his eyes. Your dedication has paid off. You have pushed your charm skill to the limit several times. Charm stat +1. Charm 13. It was the first time a stat point had increased without him leveling up or consuming blood. The system was clear that it was a fact that Quinn had continuously pushed himself while trying to learn the skill. Switching servers. Blood Evolver is online. Matchmaking in progress. Opponent found. There were myriads of abilities that could help you work better in this field, but nothing could compare to the greatness of the human mind when it came to creative thinking and engineering which led to the creation of these fields. Nate had gotten one of these said people to set up a system in which he would get notified when the Blood Evolver was online. Recently, he had also added the new user Zombie P to that list as well. While Nate was relaxing with his best friend Sam, as usual, he received a notification. Nate immediately headed off towards the capsule. Quinn had been matched up with another level 4 user, but unlike the ones he fought against previously. This user was also wearing beast gear around his chest. As he turned his head around, Quinn made sure to look him in the eyes, just as the video tutorial had said. He activated his charm the same way when he used the Daze skill. Now all he needed to do was project the thought strongly, using his mind of aiming to punch the head, while the real punch would come from below. Everything was going perfect so far, and he could imagine hitting the person in the head. Then his fist made contact, but instead of receiving feedback from hitting the body, the punch had been blocked with the other user's hand, which was guarding his face. No, I thought I did it perfectly. Why did my attack go for the head? Quinn thought. Quinn previously thought he had perfected the phantom punch, but using it with no opponent and using it against a real opponent were two different things. With the pressure to perform perfectly, and with the enemy standing in front of him, his concentration lagged at some point, so his attack failed. Eventually, the match had ended, and Quinn unsurprisingly lost. Nate was speechless. He thought he was the only person who had beaten the Blood Evolver before, and the one he knew now was a lot stronger than before. Once again, Quinn went into the next match. Nate stayed and watched carefully, but it seemed to be nearly an exact copy of the last game. After watching 4 matches, the Blood Evolver had lost 4 times in a row. There were a few others who had become fans as well, and they were nearly just as disappointed as him with the results they were seeing right now. No one would usually lose a match without giving it everything they got, and in the last 4 games, Quinn didn't use a single skill other than the flash step and the failed phantom punch. After losing 5 matches in a row, the only person that kept on watching Blood Evolver's matches was Nate. He didn't know why, but he felt that there had to be a reason for all the strange actions that Blood Evolver did in the past matches. The reason for his thinking was the fact that Quinn had lost every game doing the same thing. Only an idiot would do the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. As the next match started, Quinn now looked more confident than he did before. His opponent was a female. The ability for now was unknown, as the inspection skill didn't work in-game. Quinn rushed forward as usual, but this time, no attacks were aimed at him. When this happened, it usually meant the person he was going up against had a transformation or hardening ability, the perfect opponent for the Phantom Strike. Quinn lifted his fist and aimed for the woman's head. As she saw the punch, a large spike appeared on her face. If Quinn was to carry on moving forward, then the spike would go right through his hand. She could see the punch rushing forward and about to go through the spike. A smile appeared on her face, but suddenly she felt pain in her stomach as she keeled over. Phantom Punch skill successfully learned. The fist hadn't hit her head, but struck her stomach instead. Quinn continued using the Phantom Punch in this fashion, successfully landing hit after hit, while on the outside, Nate, who was watching the entire thing, was deeply confused. All he could see was Quinn's opponent forming spikes and blocking the attacks in the wrong places. It was clear where the punches were coming from, so why was she constantly blocking in the wrong place? The match had finally ended, and Quinn had been declared the winner, but Nate was even more confused now. However, after watching the Blood Evolver's next 3 games, and each one of them coming out in a victory in the same fashion, goosebumps started to appear all over his body. Once the system had confirmed Quinn that he had learned Phantom Punch, everything got a lot easier from then onwards. Instead of concentrating on the feeling like he did before, now all he had to do was think about the skill, and his mind would automatically do the work for him. Finally, the day had arrived. It was the weekend, and all the first-year students were told to gather inside the portal room once again. It was time to go through the orange portal. All the groups present, please raise their orange scanning devices, Dell said, as he raised the scanner for everyone to see. You will only need to point it at an object. You can see that on the screen. You can select the area or item that you want to scan. It will try its best to break down the information it has received and display it on the screen for you, although this is not the goal of the expedition. What you students need to do is look for things on the planet which have never been scanned before, and this includes beasts. In your teams, each newly scanned object will earn you points. If the item has been scanned before, you will receive no points. There is quite a range on these scanners. Before engaging in combat, it will scan every beast that is within your vision. The most useful thing about these scanners is that, even if they have never seen a beast before, it will be able to tell you what level the beast is at. After the explanation with the scanners was over, Dell went on to tell them how the expedition would work between the classes. Each class, together with their homeroom teacher, would be sent off to a certain area. When they reached their assigned space, the class would stay there for a while, allowing every one of the students to scan the area thoroughly. If they were to run into a beast with a tier higher than intermediate, they were advised to fall back and tell the teacher immediately. The homeroom teacher would then inform the generals, who would come to their aid as soon as possible. As soon as Dell's lecture was finished, the groups began making their final preparations. While Quinn was looking around, he noticed that Logan was already tinkering around with the scanner, no doubt making adjustments to the scanner's system. All of a sudden, he felt a soft touch on his shoulder, interrupting his observations. "Hey, do you need one of these if we're going outside?" Feck said, as he waved a strange object in front of Quinn. It looked like a flask made out of silver. The only difference was that, on the facade of the flask, a skull that had 2 sharp fangs on the upper jaw was displayed. It was a strange design for Quinn. If you used a normal flask, the blood would spoil in a few days. However, this one is especially used within the circle of vampires to keep blood fresh, Fex explained. Fex then pulled out a similarly styled flask from the inside of his shirt and handed it straight over to Quinn. Finally, Dell had begun to call each group into the portal. The group took a step forward as they prepared for what was to come in their orange portal expedition. While going through the portal, the group made sure to hold on to the person in front of them tightly. Finally, the distorted space ended and white light could be seen up ahead. When their eyesight slowly returned, the first thing they could see was green. Lots of green. More specifically, giant green trees. "Please step aside to allow the other students to arrive," a loud voice said as he pointed to his side. Just like last time, they had arrived in one of the areas that had been circled off. The group went over to where the man pointed, and it seemed there were other groups of students standing by the side, waiting as well. Several soldiers were checking and coordinating with them, making sure they stayed in place and didn't wander off. "It's a lot better organized than our last trip," Layla said. The first thing Quinn did was pop up his trusty umbrella to protect him from the sun. But this time, it didn't do much to make him feel better. The place was humid, hot, and sticky, and it looked like he wasn't the only one being affected, as everyone around was sweating heavily as well. The shelter itself was vastly different as well. In a way, it looked incomplete. Most of it seemed to be made from some type of wood and mud, although the architecture was impressive. They had managed to build upon the large trees, incorporating them into their shelter. But the thing that surprised him the most was just how many residential houses there were in an orange portal like this one. "This is one of the cheapest places for people to live in," Layla explained. "The citizens aren't required to pay tax on an orange planet, so those who can't live on Earth and can't even make a living on a green portal planet end up here." Quinn started having strange thoughts after hearing this from Layla. If it was true, those who couldn't afford a place to live on Earth had no choice but to be here. Then why didn't Quinn end up in one of these places like these kids? When his parents had died, a government official had come over and explained to him that they would look after him until he was 16 and provide him with an apartment. So why didn't these kids get the same type of treatment? The students were now being led along to an open space, and while doing so, they could see the people from the shelter and children come out from above. They looked down on the new students, peeking over from the bridge. All of the first-year students were once again lined up in rows with the homeroom teachers at the front, while Faye and Leo stood in the middle of all the classes. They had come to an open area of the man-made forest. The trees had been rooted and dug out, and the ground flattened. Most of what they were standing on was mud. They could also see several paths from the circle, open area leading deeper into the forest. "All right, everyone, each class shall now explore a different path," Faye said. "The scanners will not activate until your teachers say so. You will continue to follow the path, and your teachers will tell you when you are in an unexplored area. My last warning to you all, you will encounter beasts on this trip. At what level, I do not know. I wish you all luck," Faye shouted. Fex, who was walking by Quinn's side, took in a deep breath of fresh air. "Nah. Compared to Earth and these planets with all the bright colors, our home has nothing," Fex moaned. While relocating, they had decided to choose a mostly dark place, and they also needed an atmosphere that they could still live in. They had found the perfect place for vampires, but I don't know why, but it always felt strange to me. The vampires were indeed no longer on Earth like they were when the blonde man was a vampire. At some point, they had relocated to a different planet. As they walked, Quinn decided to use his inspection skill on every new thing he saw. The pathway came to an end, and now the mud had turned into thick, heavy leaves and short green plants. "This should be a good spot," Dell said as he placed his large shield onto the floor. They were now in an open area. There weren't as many trees and vines. It allowed them to see from all directions. "Students are not to travel more than 200 meters from this spot. If you do, your scanner will notify you, indicating they will no longer work," Dell explained. "For each new plant discovered, you will receive 5 points. For each new beast discovery, 20 points. All right, your scanners are on." At the same time, each of the scanners made a ding sound, and the students rushed off in different directions. "Let's do this," Layla said. "Let's get to the top for Aaron." Quinn liked that idea. He rushed off into a section of his own along with Peter and the rest. The battle for points was fierce as students continued to run around the area, scanning every item in sight. "Damn, this has been scanned already," a student complained. Some of the weaker groups decided to stay together as they went around. Although this stopped other teams from snatching points from them, their progress was relatively slower than those who roamed alone. The stronger groups decided it would be best to split up. This way they were able to cover a wider range, while the other groups decided to do a mixture of something in between. Out of the strategies implemented by different groups, to catch up to the others, Quinn's group decided to do a mixture of the two. They decided that they would travel around in pairs. Quinn and Peter, Layla and Vorden, and lastly, Fex and Sia. It was important for them to have one strong member with a support-type member. The group had already split up, and while everyone was off looking for some new items to discover, Quinn noticed something peculiar. There were 10 groups, yet nearly every group had a single member that acted as a type of mule, a person designated to carry their belongings. After a closer inspection, he also noticed that these mules were people who had the lowest levels in their group. Nevertheless, they would still wander off and look around, as instructed by their team. Wouldn't this be the perfect chance? Quinn thought. Right now they weren't in school, and many of the students had separated from each other. If he was to take a sample of their blood and mind control them afterwards to forget what had happened, no one would ever know what he had done. It was the perfect crime in such a perfect situation. Blood type A positive consumed, strength 20. Eventually, Quinn managed to find 2 more students, and he used the same tactic as before, getting him another 2 stat points. Quinn managed to get another blood type O, increasing his charm points to 14, while also obtaining another blood type A, increasing his strength. Faye and Leo were standing together at the starting point where all the groups had split off. Suddenly, a beeping sound was heard from their watches, indicating that one of the teams had asked for help. "I'll get to it," Faye said as she stormed off at lightning speed in the direction of one of the paths. Leo stood there, taking in the fresh smell around him, but it was quickly disturbed as another beep reverberated from his watch. "Another one?" Leo said. "Is this planet more dangerous than we thought?" He had hoped that perhaps the teachers were only being trigger-happy, sending out a signal prematurely. It was always better for them to be on the cautious side when it came to these things, but the fact that 2 signals were sent out at the same time concerned Leo. The group had managed to obtain 25 points in total. They also discovered and scanned a peculiar type of rock mineral in the mix. Still, they were vastly behind the others, and their weighted points at the end of everything would be -25. What they were doing at this moment wasn't working, and they needed a change of plan. The quickest way for them to earn points would be to find beasts. Ding, ding, ding. Just then, a few meters away from Quinn, one of the scanners had made 3 dings, a sound that he hadn't heard yet. The scanner pointed at what looked like a boulder that was stuck in the ground. The top part could be seen, and it had several areas of green moss growing over it. But after the student had finished scanning the unique object, he took a few steps backward. Panic was evident on his face. "A beast!" he shouted. "I found a beast!" The student's teammates had gathered around the excited student to see what he was babbling on about. One of the students, who was moving closer, turned out to be Quinn. The system granted him a special bonus when he first killed a beast, though this beast has never been seen by humans before. Perhaps being the first person to kill such a beast would also grant him additional points. The team that had discovered the beast gathered around the scanner, which displayed basic information about the beasts, and after reading one line, they were excited. It was a basic tier beast. Keeping this secret to themselves, they immediately dashed forward. If it was an intermediate tier beast, the group might have been a little cautious, but a basic tier was easy pickings for a team of 5. Seeing the team of 5, Quinn was upset about how hesitant he had been. But he couldn't act right now in front of these people. The beast that the group was chasing looked like an ordinary boulder that was stuck in the ground. Even now, as the students charged towards the thing, there was no reaction from the beast. It still looked like a boulder. Seeing this, an idea came to Quinn's mind. He ran aside the students who were captivated by what was happening and entered a different part of the forest. Fex, too, decided to go off and keep an eye on what Quinn was trying to do. "Come on, guys, we can't waste time just watching this thing. Let's carry on looking around," Vorden said. The student's hand, who was leading the charge, turned into a brick-like substance, while the other students behind also drew their weapons and had their abilities readied. The student at the front slammed his fist into the boulder. A loud impact was heard, but there was no reaction. The ones from behind had also decided to use their attacks on the strange boulder-like beast, but the same had happened, and it seemed like the shell was nearly impossible to break. Seeing that the so-called beast was doing nothing, and not wanting to waste any more time, the students continued to scan around for other things. While everyone else had now lost interest in the beast, Quinn had not. He went through the forest using his inspection skill on every boulder-type thing he could see. Most of them were just that, regular boulders. But then he had finally achieved a result. Basic tier beast, boulder snail. A beast that has an incredibly hard outer shell. The beast will only move in rain. He was unaware that he was being watched by Fex. Using strings as he walked between trees in the air, he made his movements silently, and now he was carefully watching Quinn from above. Quinn stomped his foot onto the ground, raised the energy inside him, and pulled back his arm as he let his other fist outward at the same time. He activated his skill Blood Spray to create his still most powerful strike, Blood Hammer. It sounded like someone had shot off a bullet in the middle of the forest. The beast had a large crack in the boulder, and black liquid was slowly dripping out from it. Basic beast has been killed. 50 EXP gained. First time killing boulder snail. 100 bonus EXP gained. You are the first person to kill a boulder snail. 5,000 bonus EXP gained. Now, the loud sound that erupted from the impact of the blood hammer on the beast's shell had echoed throughout the forest. Within its chambers, a large figure dwelling deep inside a cave awoke. Bloodshot red eyes flared open as it made its move towards the sound. For defeating the new type of beast, Quinn had gained a bonus of 5,000 points, which had leveled him up a total of 3 times, and now he also had 6 free stat points to play with. For now, he thought it was best if he was to keep these stat points in reserve. Quinn wanted to place the stat points into his charm skill. Still, the orange portal planet was a dangerous place, and Quinn didn't know when he might need to use his other stats for dangerous situations. Before leaving the area, Quinn managed to shove his hand into the small crack he had made, even though it was only a basic tier crystal. Quinn was already thinking about what type of armor the crystal could be used for. It had been over an hour now, and the group had a total of 60 points. Now when students were scanning items with the scanner, it would constantly come up with an error. 15 minutes had passed, and there wasn't a single sound indicating the students had found something. "All right, students, everyone gather up in the center. It's time for us to move on to the next area," Dell shouted. As the students started to walk over to Dell, loud, low sounds could be heard, and vibration could be felt underneath their feet. A large beast stood on all fours and had a long neck. There was no fur, and it resembled something similar to a dinosaur. Even the size was something similar to what they would have imagined. The only difference was on its back. It seemed to have a large flower bud. It completely covered it from its neck to its tail. Advanced Tier Beast Florasaur. Unable to obtain further information. "Guys, we have to run," Quinn said in a serious tone. After finding out it was an advanced tier beast, Quinn didn't even think about the possibility of trying to defeat it because of its experience points. Last time, he almost died fighting against an intermediate beast. Dell was never much of a fighter, and his ability also didn't support that fact. Immediately, he started tapping his wristwatch, sending out a distress signal. Dell just wanted one of the sergeants to appear in front of them now. Out of all the students, Quinn was the first to take a step away, trying to get a head start on the other students. But the sound of his steps caused the leaves to ruffle, and the creature's head turned and immediately looked at Quinn. "Maybe moving isn't a good idea," Layla said. Dell had felt the same way, which was why he hadn't shouted at the students to run away or retreat. The sudden movements could frighten the beasts. Most beasts were hostile towards humans, but the higher tiers seemed to have more intelligence, and some would leave humans alone. The bud on the beast's back slowly started to open up, revealing a pink center. Out of the pink center, 6 vines rose in the air before dropping down and falling to the beast's side. Although the beast wasn't moving, the vines were stretching out from the buds as if there was no end in sight. One of the vines had reached the student closest to the beast. After waiting a while, nothing happened. The student eventually opened his eyes. At that moment, the head of the vine opened up and attached itself to the student. Using both hands, he grabbed onto the vine and tried to pull as hard as he could, but it was no use. The suction and stickiness of the vine were too strong, and he couldn't break free. The vine lifted the student high into the air and towards the beast's mouth. "Everyone run! It's a hostile advanced tier beast!" Dell shouted as he ran into a random part of the forest. However, while Dell was running blindly through the forest, he was aware of a great problem. The distress signal sent from the watch was only a signal sent to the sergeants. They would then head over in that direction. If Leo or Faye was to head there now, they would have no clue where Dell or the other students had gone. The students at the back could hear the booming footsteps getting louder and louder. When Dell had made it past another tree, they had finally come out to an open area. The open area was quite large. To the left and right there were two paths, but they were slightly slanted going uphill, and Dell didn't like their chances of outrunning the beast. "We have no choice. We have to turn and fight," Dell shouted. The vines continued to hover around the beast's side as if they were alive like snakes, while the main body of the beast charged straight ahead into the students. Like a whip, the vines were used to knock the students who were closest to it. "Healers and support-type abilities, come and stay behind me. We don't want you to get hurt," Dell commanded. "Anyone who uses a beast weapon as their main attack, come closer to me now. My ability allows me to double the strength and durability of any beast weapon for a limited time. We need to defeat the beast before time runs out." Quinn overheard Dell said. "Pio, come!" Quinn shouted as he dashed off towards the fallen students on the ground. Peter wasn't the only one that was following Quinn. Right now on his other side, Fex was running closely behind him as well. "I'll cover you while you do whatever you want to do, but you will owe me one after this," Fex said with a wink. As the three boys got closer to the beast, the vine started to head towards them, slashing out at an incredible speed. Now on the other side, another vine was coming towards them, and this time it was Fex's turn. Fex was a vampire and was unable to use his ability just like Quinn. However, there was a clear advantage of Fex's ability over others. When using his string ability, it was almost invisible to the human eye. As the vine came towards him, spread both his hands out and slashed it downward, cutting the head of the vine right off. However, just like with Peter, the vine seemed to have an incredible recovery speed, and right now the head was starting to form out of the cut cells by Fex. Quinn placed his finger into the student's blood around the chest. It was too far away for the other students to see the finer details, and everyone else was busy fighting the beast. Quickly shifting his hand into his mouth, he quickly picked up the student and rushed back to the others. "AB blood type consumed, stamina 18. Quinn repeated this process with the other students who had been hit. In total, he managed to save 5 students, and at the same time consume their blood. All in all, Quinn had gotten stronger. Strength 23, agility 19, stamina 18, charm 16. While Quinn was busy looking at his stats, and the two by his side were busy dealing with the vines, a third vine had already set its sight on Quinn. When the two had looked at each other, the vine had set its target. It reached out as far as it could to grab onto Quinn. Just as the vine was about to reach Quinn, its movements suddenly slowed, and Quinn was able to create a distance between the two. That's when he noticed the strange, ghost-like spear, half of its body inside an elephant. "The spirit spear?" Quinn said confusingly. Upon looking back, he could see Sia had decided to help out by using her spear. Thanks to Sia's spear, the beast had slowed down just enough for Quinn to move out of the way, avoiding the vine whip. A second spear was thrown and had landed in the same spot on the beast's legs. The effective 2 spears had stacked, and now the beast was 20% slower than it usually would have been, and also 20% weaker. The students took advantage of this temporary weakness. Their attacks, which were bouncing off the beast, are now damaging it, and the vines that were troubling slowed down. With Vorden and Sia using their spirit spears, the beast had now lost 40% of its overall strength. It was nearly half of what it used to be. Quinn no longer felt the need for him or Fex to get involved when fighting the beast. The beast now looked heavily injured. It lifted its front 2 feet into the air and slammed them onto the ground. The beast repeatedly did this action as it roared and screamed. At the same time, the vines that were coming off from the bud on its back swung more widely. The beast used its long head and looked back into the forest. The next moment, it started running back from where it came from. "Nobody should chase the beast," Dell shouted. "Some advanced-type beasts and above have something called a berserker mode. Once injured to a certain point, if the beast feels like it's stuck in a corner, it will activate its berserker mode, sometimes increasing its strength several times." But then, a female with light pink hair stepped in front of Quinn and bowed down to him. As she lifted her head, her eyes were filled with tears. "Thank you so much for saving my friend," the pink-haired girl said. After that, she hurried off to join her teammates. The thanks should have made Quinn feel good, but it didn't. Originally, he had only gone out there not to save the students, but because he saw it as an opportunity to take their blood. He didn't deserve the praise. When the students had all settled down, they decided to have a minute of silence, out of respect for the students that had been lost. But they couldn't spend much time because they were in a serious situation. Right now, Leo had arrived at the camp where the distress signal had come from. There were no students around. Leo started to hunt around for clues when the sounds of large, heavy footsteps could be heard heading in his direction. A large flame of red energy seemed to be spiraling in his direction. This was what happened when a beast was just about to go into berserker mode. "If it gets to that point, it might be a little bit inconvenient," Leo moaned as he drew out his trusty sword. Immediately 6 lines of red energy came whipping out at Leo. Focusing his mind, he waited until all paths of the red energy crossed each other. In that moment, he took a single swing of his blade. The 6 vines that had come out at him had all been sliced off. The line of energy was thin and white, but the beast had no time to react, and it had completely passed through its neck. "I guess you can't regenerate your head," said Leo. After defeating the beast, he didn't stop for a moment, not even to extract the crystal core from its body. Right now, the students were a priority, and if they had run into similar beasts to the one he had just faced, he feared the worst for the students. They started to travel up the left side of the mountain. Dell had made the decision and was ordering the group around, but he wasn't the one that stood in front of the group. Instead, some of the stronger groups had their frontliner. The scanners had been turned on. They would still record points and work as long as they were within a 200-meter radius of Dell. The group decided to stay closer, and no one was venturing far away from their team or far from the whole group. The students started to walk around to see if there were any other options to scale the mountain, or if they could see the shelter from the edges of the mountain. Dell was currently just standing in the middle, looking up at the mountain to his right and down the sloped path from where they had come from. In the middle of their exploration, though, 3 clear and distinctive dings were suddenly heard. The students all turned to where the sound came from, as it indicated that a beast had been discovered by the scanner. But looking at the student whose scanner went off, it looked like there was nothing, even around him. "What did you discover?" Dell said as he walked over to the student. The student pointed at a purple blade of grass on the floor. But to his surprise, the scanner said he wasn't holding a plant, but a beast. When Dell snatched the scanner from the student, a dark expression appeared on his face. "An intermediate beast, this little thing? How can that be possible?" The students were not actively looking at the grass around them, but now they noticed that there were a few single strands of purple grass every so often from the grasses surrounding them. "Is it going to rain?" Layla asked, but Quinn was interested in the beast. He bent down and looked closer at the blade of grass. "Inspect. Intermediate beast. Dumping bait beast. The top of the beast's head can often seem like a blade of grass, while most of its body remained underground. The beast cannot move, but when the rain comes it will sprout from underneath." As a single raindrop fell on the purple shade of grass, it suddenly shook, and the ground started to vibrate as well. "Guys, get away from the purple grass!" Quinn shouted to his teammates. "Let's head back down the slope." As Quinn said these words, a 2-meter-tall purple plant appeared behind him. Its body was as thick as a tree, and its head was as wide as a car. On top of its head was the strand of grass that could barely be seen on top of the giant plant-like beast. "Quinn!" Layla shouted as a plant dived down. But it was too late. The large plant had swallowed Quinn. Chaos erupted on the side slope of the mountain. However, the beasts were too fast. As if it was a snake, the plants opened their mouths wide and sometimes consumed more than one student at a time, and one of these students was Quinn. "No, he's not dead," Peter replied. "I can tell." "I'll go get him," Fex said. There was no panic on Fex's face, just a slight smile. "Eat me then, you piece of—" Then he was gone, swallowed by the beast plant. The others stayed there watching the plant for a few seconds, hoping that Fex had some sort of plan. But after watching for a while and seeing no result, the situation couldn't be more obvious. "Run!" Vorden shouted. "That's all we can do. If Peter says Quinn is safe, then we just have to believe him." The whole group had now been swallowed by different beet plants. Fex and Quinn, Layla and Vorden, and finally Peter and Sia. A few of the other students had been swallowed. A few were also knocked off the side of the cliff. The moment the rain stopped, all the beasts went into hibernation. They returned underground and turned into beautiful stalks of purple grasses once more. Amazingly, soil started to form over the purple grasses, and in the blink of an eye, the mountain returned to its original state. It was as if nothing had happened. "Is it over?" a student asked, huffing and panting. He felt as if he would collapse from exhaustion at any moment. "What should we do now, and what about the others?" another asked. Dell looked around, and he could see there wasn't much blood. Also, during his studies, he discovered that plant-type beasts weren't mostly carnivores. The fact that these plants probably didn't have the acid necessary to digest meat meant that the students were still probably alive. "I hate to say this, but they're probably already dead," Dell lied. "It's best if we head back down to where we were. If we carry on going upward, then there might be even more dangerous beasts." Before heading back down the slope, a student spotted another person walking up. As they saw who it was, a huge smile appeared on their faces. "Sergeant Leo!" the student shouted. There wasn't much that needed to be said, as Leo agreed that he would take them back to the shelter for now. Just as the students were about to head down the slope, Leo started to walk over to a strange object. A certain item was giving off energy, similar to that of a beast weapon. "Do you mind telling me what it looks like?" Leo asked Dell, who wouldn't leave his side. "It appears to be some type of metal flask, although it has some strange design on it. It looks like a beast's head with fangs. Maybe it's one of the items that the students dropped during the struggle," Dell answered. The last thing Quinn could remember was Layla shouting his name. When he finally reached the bottom, Quinn felt his body continuously sinking. "If the plant swallowed me and now I'm falling, doesn't that mean I'm falling into another part of the mountain or underneath the planet?" Quinn thought. He was strong and he had a sturdy body as a vampire, but what was he falling into? "What the hell is this?" a boy yelled as his voice echoed out. "It can't be. Is that Fex's voice?" Quinn thought. Bang! The force and Fex's weight struck Quinn's head and managed to push him through the last bit of strange substance. All he could do was brace himself for impact as he curled up into a ball. Covered in rubble from the walls of the cave, Quinn stood up and discovered that not a lot of damage was done to him. Just then, he could see Fex falling through the sky nearly at the same spot. "Quinn, catch me!" Fex shouted. Still remembering how Fex had shoved him down under here, Quinn chose not to help. If the fall didn't kill him, it wouldn't kill Fex. Stepping to the side at the last moment, Quinn allowed Fex to land headfirst into the same spot as him. They seemed to be in a large, empty cavern. Several large holes or tunnels seemed to lead to different paths. Looking above them, they saw the plant hanging from the ceiling that had swallowed them whole. Layla and Vorden were both being slowly sucked down, while their faces were pressed up against each other. This is all your fault for grabbing me," Layla shouted. As the two fell from the plant into the large cave, Layla used her ability to slow her down from falling at a fast speed. Vorden also used the same ability and achieved the same result, so they managed to get down onto the floor safely. In another section of the cavern, the last pairing was of Sia and Peter. Sia noticed that Peter's expression didn't have any trace of fear. She felt like she had no choice but to grab him. Sia was hurt, but Peter managed to break most of her fall. But as she opened her eyes and looked at her comrade next to her, she could see that all of his limbs were mangled and broken. "What's that noise?" Syl said as he stood up from his usual crouched position. The screams from Layla seemed to be so loud that they even reached Syl, who would usually ignore most things. Syl placed his hand on Vorden's shoulder, who was in the chair. "Swap with me," Syl said, his grip tightening on Vorden's shoulder. Knowing that he had no choice, Vorden reluctantly left the seat. "Why are you attacking me?" Syl asked. In another part of the cavern, two more students seemed to be stuck together, dealing with their problems. Sia was taken aback at the sight of Peter's legs all mangled. They were utterly broken, and it looked like part of the bone had splintered through parts of the skin. She turned her head away, unable to look at the sight any longer. "Stay here, I will go look for help," Sia said in a panic. "You know, if you didn't hold on to me, the fall wouldn't have been as bad," Peter replied in a calm voice. "I think we should go this way," a voice said, stood right behind her. "Pio, but how? Your legs were all mangled just a few seconds ago." Sia still didn't know Peter's ability, but she had a guess. His watch indicated he was a level 4, and if he managed to recover from an injury like that, most likely his ability was a healing one or a regenerative one. The only thing she couldn't quite put her finger on was the healing speed. Not knowing where to run to, she decided to head into one of the many tunnels. If another student had arrived and had no relation to the person named Pio, then maybe she would have bolted towards Logan, but seeing that the two of them had some type of a relationship, she didn't want to risk it. The cave was dark, and it was hard for her to see, but each of the tunnels gave off a little reflection of light. There was always the chance that the small amount of light could be radiating from a beast, or it could be a raw crystal. Because of this, as Sia ran, she also had to be careful about her footing. "This is a pain. I wish I bought some type of light with me or something," Sia complained. Taking another step forward, her foot seemed to be lodged between something. She quickly managed to pull it, but it had greatly slowed her down. She scuttled along until she was behind Logan. Logan then tapped something on the side of his suit, which brightened up the area around him with green lights. The pieces on Logan's equipment were illuminating a small 5-meter radius around them. "I adjusted the scanner the school gave us to increase its radius. I had to power it with my beast crystals. I don't get any points for doing that, but to me, it was well worth it," said Logan. "That's when I discovered that there seemed to be a strange tunnel underground, but they didn't quite look natural, so I decided to investigate. I never thought anyone else would be down here, so it was a nice surprise to see you." "Do you know the way out?" Sia asked. Realizing from what Logan said, he should have a wide area mapped out using his scanner. "No," Logan replied. Although this was a lie. He knew they would ask to lead him out of here, but Logan had discovered something on his scanner that he had to check out before leaving. Somewhere inside the large cave, Fex and Quinn had decided to walk down one of the tunnels. While inside the tunnel, the connection between Peter seemed to be lost. It had happened ever since he went underground. Quinn thought that it might have something to do with the distance between the two at the moment, as he didn't know that Peter and the others were underground as well. Thinking that help would never arrive, they decided to just leave it up to fate and pick the tunnel with the biggest entrance. As they walked down the tunnel, they noticed that the walls were surrounded by thin blue crystals that gave off a slight glow to them. Not enough to light up the whole area, but one could follow the small light source quite easily. "What are these?" Quinn asked, looking at the small crystals. "Basic tier crystal. Would you like to store it in your system?" The shock from the message was quite immense. At school, they had been taught that the beast crystals could only be obtained from beasts. This was why the human race had been sending hunting parties to slay the beasts, even though there was a chance of death. Some crystals could be used to create powerful weapons, even more powerful than their modern equipment. But right here, crystals were hanging freely on the wall around him, and it wasn't just one crystal. There seemed to be hundreds of crystals through the tunnel they had just walked. Exiting the tunnel, it seemed like they'd arrived at what looked like a type of town. Buildings stretched out far and wide, and it was comparably as large as any one of the shelters they've seen before. Their gaze moved on towards the tallest building that stood in the center of the place. Although a town underneath a mountain was surprising to them, it didn't seem impossible. There were rumors of such shelters being built on other planets where the temperatures could reach extreme levels at different times of the year. Underground shelters were the only answer to such uninhabitable places. Although the place looked abandoned and was void of people, the buildings were a different matter. The structures looked perfectly fine and hadn't deteriorated a single bit. The only semblance of the passage of time of abandonment was a layer of dust or rock-like substance from the ceiling that coated the top of everything. And finally, the design. Although the substance was strong, it wasn't as flexible and nimble as Galthrium. This meant that the edges weren't smoothed out, giving a slight rocky look. "They're Dalki structures," Quinn muttered. What are you on about?" Flex replied. "These aren't Dalki structures. They're vampire structures." "The boy is right," the system replied. "These resemble the structures that were built in my time." Quinn said, "Why don't we check out some of the buildings? Maybe there will be something inside which will tell us if it was the Dalkis who made this or the vampires." For the first time, as they got closer to the tower, it looked like some of the buildings had been destroyed, as if they had taken part in a battle. The top had crumbled to the ground, and some structures no longer existed. Just then, they heard a sound of growling from the sides. "I guess it's time to call on some extra help." Fex touched his ear and pulled on his dangling earring. Suddenly, in the palm of his hand, the earring started to glow until eventually it started to change its shape, forming what looked like a cross between a bull and a bat. "Ham here at your service," the bull said excitedly as it flew in a circle. It had been a while since Fex had last used Ham, and he was starting to miss his little companion. Finally, I get to spread my wings about," Ham cheered. "Can you sense what's around us?" Fex asked. "I think some beasts are surrounding us," Ham replied. "This place is disturbing the flow of my powers." Ham then started to look around where they were. "Wait, are we back home?" The two boys were surrounded by what looked like strange, dog-like creatures. There were more than 20, and possibly even more in hiding. The dogs had no fur, but displayed a slight tint of red on their skin. Their tongues were out, dangling from their mouth. A bit longer than regular dogs, and a little pointed. However, the most creepy thing about them was that they didn't have eyes. Inspect, basic tier beast, furry hound. A beast who is blind but has sensitive hearing. It can locate its enemy's position even with the quietest of footsteps. It will often use its long tongue for attacks. The tongue is stronger than most. Now unafraid of the beasts, Quinn wanted to get a kill before Fex, just in case. No one had killed the beast before. The distance between him and the beast wasn't great, but Quinn chose to use the blood kick to try to finish the beast in one strike. 10 EXP gained. First time killing beast, furry hound. 100 bonus EXP gained. 2640 of 3200 XP. "Ham above!" Fex shouted, and immediately Ham flew up in the sky. Fex then leapt in the air and attached one of his strings to the ring around Ham's nose. From above, Fex was easily able to see his targets. As he detached himself and started swirling down, he precisely knew where to throw out his pieces of string. Hard-earn. As the strings fell, power surging through him left his body and was inserted into the strings, now making them just as hard and sharp as a sword. 5 of the hounds were killed in an instant. Finally, all the hounds in the area were defeated. Fex had defeated 15 of them, while Quinn had 8. 2720 of 3200 EXP. After defeating the dogs, Quinn decided to collect the crystals. "Boss, you're not planning to head to that tower, are you?" Ham said as it flew up in the air. "Why, what's wrong?" Fex said. "I think there might be danger there," Ham replied. While Ham and Fex were busy talking, a notification screen appeared directly in front of Quinn. 5 EXP shared. It was a message that he had never received before, and he found it strange that it came up while he had done nothing. Quinn would gain EXP as long as Peter had killed something and was nearby. Without thinking about it, Peter and Sia followed Logan around. While they were inside the cavern, Logan continued to walk confidently, leading the way. He knew exactly where he wanted to go, as he picked one of the tunnels without checking the others. While traveling, their group also discovered the same type of blue crystals embedded into the wall. Naturally, Logan decided to take one for research, but he already had an idea of what it was just by looking at it. After exiting the tunnel, they too could see the magnificent sight of the strange town, and although it came as a surprise to the other two, Logan had already expected this. It was exactly what had come up on the scanner. The one visible place was the tower that stood in the center, like a beaming torch in the middle. It had the most amount of crystal on the very top, illuminating it in the dark. However, while using his scanner from above, he could see all the building structures and things around it, but he was unable to see what was inside the tower. As they got closer to the tower, Logan transformed his robotic arms into 2 round blasters. "While scanning this area earlier, I found that the beasts seem to be concentrated around the tower. Strange, right? Low-level beasts don't usually have a form of high intelligence. They hunt, sleep, and eat. Sometimes they do this in packs and might have a type of territory, but this seems oddly specific. In a place as large as this, and with many beasts, usually they would be several territories and maybe several packs. So why are they all centered around the tower? As if they were guarding it or gathering around it for some reason." As they continued to walk down the street, suddenly Peter ran straight off to the side into one of the buildings. A few moments later, and Peter returned, holding what looked like a dog in his hand. Black blood splattered over him, and the dog was carried, lifeless. "They've been following us," Peter said, "and more are coming." It didn't take long after Peter's warning, because Logan and even Sia could now see several dogs in view. Without hesitation, both Logan and Sia started to attack the dogs. She threw out spears, slowing the ones jumping towards her and leaping out of the way. Both Peter and Logan could see there was still plenty around them. Still, they didn't run away but stood there at the edge of the street next to the buildings, growling. On closer inspection, it seemed like the dogs were no longer looking at them. Instead, they were facing the street, looking out towards the tower in front of them. From the street, the sounds of footsteps could be heard. Whatever was coming towards them was frightening the beasts even more, because with each footstep, it looked like the beasts were pulling back slightly. After collecting the beast crystals from the defeated hounds, Quinn suddenly received the message about obtaining EXP. He had figured out that the EXP he just gained must have been from Peter. This meant one thing: Peter was close. Quinn was still unable to sense Peter's presence, like he could when he was above ground. Quinn wanted to go searching for Peter. 5 EXP shared. The message just confirmed that Peter was still in combat. So Quinn picked a random direction and headed off. Slowly, Layla's eyes started to open. Her vision was blurry at first, but what stood out to her was the pain in the back of her head. "Are you okay?" Vorden asked. "Get away from me," Layla said in a panic. She pushed her feet off the floor against her, and once again her head had banged into the wall. Vorden did as asked and slowly backed away, seeing that she was panicked. She had already been hurt, and Vorden didn't want to cause any more pain. "I'm sorry," Vorden said. "Vorden, are you okay? Sometimes it seems like you suddenly change. I want to believe you when you say you don't mean to hurt me, but when I end up like this—" As Layla spoke, her voice was shaky. She tried her best to hide it, but Vorden could feel the fear. Lately, the changes happening to Vorden had become more frequent, and now for the first time in a while, Syl was actively asking for a seat. The worst thought in his mind was the possibility of one of the others taking control of the seat. If they took over, he wouldn't know what to do. "When I first met Quinn, I knew he was different," Vorden replied. "Of course, at the time, I didn't know he was a vampire. I was sick of it, sick of everything, and decided if I could at least save one person, it would be enough for me." "What does that have to do with me, though? Can't we both get along with Quinn?" Layla asked. "Are you jealous or something?" "Not me," Vorden mumbled, too quiet for Layla to hear. "I haven't exactly had the best of experiences since coming here," Vorden replied. "I think it's normal to be a bit unstable after what we have been through." As Vorden finished what he was saying, he took a step forward. Layla reacted by shuffling her knees closer to herself, curling into a ball. The sight of this reminded him of Syl, and in a sweet, calming voice, he did what he usually did without thinking about it. Vorden started to sing. "It will be okay. I will make your worries go away. I am by your side. I will always be kind." As she listened to the soft angelic voice, without realizing it, Vorden was already next to her once again. He gently lifted his hand and touched her head, bringing it down and closer to his chest. All his movements were so soft as he inspected the wound. It was a side of Vorden she had never seen before. "I like this, Vorden," Layla said. This was the first time that Logan had ever felt panic. Due to him having night vision in the helmet he was wearing, he could see the beast before it came into view. Basic tier, intermediate tier, advanced tier, and right now they were about to face something that was at least at king tier level. Throughout history, whenever a beast that had a humanoid shape was discovered, it would at least be at the king tier level or above. Knowing that he would need everyone's help, Logan immediately changed one of his blaster's shapes, slightly allowing it to be more narrow. The armor shifted at a fantastic speed, and when it had finished transforming, Logan quickly fired 3 blasts into the buildings around them. The shots weren't energy blasts like before. Instead, these were sticky light balls. They allowed a considerable amount of light to be shown and would easily stick onto whatever object they hit. The sticky lights had been shot in a triangle formation around them. One to the left, one to the right, and one slightly behind, where the king-tier beast was standing. This lit up the entire street. Now that there was a light source, Sia could see what Logan could see, and she knew straight away the danger of the beast. The beast slowly continued to walk towards the group, and by now, all of the dogs in the area had already scurried away. Although it had an outer human shape, it was a bit on the larger end. It stood around 8 feet tall. Its body was twisted and strange, as if it was made of mud and rocks. The muscle structure of the creature was outlined with plant roots, while the rest just looked like a mound of mud. Several human skeletons could be seen half sunken in its body and half sticking out. Finally, on its 2 long arms, there were no fingers. Instead, they were long and sharp like a blade. The blades shined green in color like a hard jade. What Logan needed to do was get his most powerful weapon and suit on, but it would take some time. His suit started to break down into little spiders. They were eventually all scattered on the floor. From the ground up, they started to rebuild a different type of suit right in front of him. Peter took a look at the beast. It had now stopped walking forward and stood in the middle of the street. It placed one of its bladed hands in front of the other and scraped them against each other. A slight screeching sound could be heard as the beast continued this process. Peter said, "It already considers us intruders. It will keep attacking us until we're gone, I can tell." With those words said, Peter threw his bag to the ground and dashed forward. It was at an incredible speed that Peter had not displayed until this point, and it was a surprise to him. Although Sia was frightened, she wasn't stupid. She too got into position, dashing towards one of the sides of the building. While doing so, she threw out her spirit spears. However, the beast stood there and allowed the spears to be lodged into the upper part of its body. When Peter was in range, the beast swung down its blade hand. Using all his strength, Peter swung both his fists together like a tennis racket. As the hands met with the side of the blade, the power was surprisingly equal. The blades were knocked away, but Peter hadn't budged. Adjusting its power, it swung its blade faster and stronger with its other hand. Peter was unable to do anything. All he could see now was the dark black ceiling above. Peter's legs had been cleanly cut off. The beast then walked forward, ignoring Peter on the ground. Sia then noticed that its body seemed to be facing in a certain direction. It was looking at Logan. The suit's creation was almost done. It was mostly silver in color, matching that of the spiders. Unlike the previous one, which was quite large and bulky, looking almost mech-light. Only the last part remained, which was the head. Logan saw the beast coming towards him and decided to quickly place his body into the suit. He planned on allowing the spiders to complete the final part. The suit of armor had been completed. "This won't be enough," Logan predicted after witnessing the fight between Peter and the beast. He had seen Peter fight in the VR game, and he could gauge his strength. There was still one more thing Logan needed. A weapon. A female robotic voice sounded inside his head. 2 intermediate-tier crystals detected. An energy weapon is being generated." The beast was now only a few meters away from Logan's position. The suit he had formed now focused on attack power. Just as Logan was planning to dash towards it, a familiar voice shouted from behind the beast. "Hey, if you want to forget about me, you have to make sure you've killed me first," Peter shouted. As Peter stood there, she noticed he had his hand over his belly. His regenerative powers were impressive, but he had used too much energy, and for the first time, he felt hungry. It swung its arm out, and Peter could see the blade. With his reaction speed, he was able to react to the attack, but he could tell that he was a little bit too late, and the blade this time would chop his head off. He continued to duck down with all his might, and as he did, the sound of an object swinging fast through the air was heard. "My head! It's all right, it's still on me," Peter thought. Looking at the beast, spirit spears could be seen plunging deep into its body. Sia, who had been watching from the side, was deeply confused. She looked closely at the spears that were inside the beast. They looked identical to her own. The only problem was that she wasn't the one who had thrown them. "They say heroes always arrive at the last second," Vorden said with a smile as he appeared out from one of the buildings with Layla standing by his side. "Your family member, Peter Race White, is getting hungry." Seeing this message brought back bad memories for Quinn, but he was worried about what was happening, so he started to pick up the pace. Coming from the side of one of the buildings, both of them had quickly assessed the situation. Seeing a humanoid creature, they knew the others were in danger, and when they saw Peter trying to confront the thing, they didn't have much time to think and needed to act straight away. "Layla, go check up on Logan and see if there's anything you can do to help," Vorden said. Vorden still had not gotten the chance to gather many abilities. Sia's support ability was at level 4, and Layla's telekinesis ability was at level 2. Using Rayton, he could power that up to level 6. Not only that, but Peter needed Vorden's help. Based on the last attack, he had only come out alive by the skin of his teeth. The beast tried to swing its hand mid-air. Then, the spirit blade's time ran out. Now that its speed had returned to normal, it looked up at Peter, ready to finish him off once again. It prepared its legs, ready to spring into action once again, but just before it was about to set off, Vorden threw another one of the spirit spears, landing right in the back of the beast's legs. Now the beast was looking in Vorden's direction. As it looked down, another spirit spear was stuck in its body. The beast was sure it was keeping an eye on the other boy, so where did the spear come from? "Pretty boy, you owe me a date after this one," Sia shouted. Before the beast could choose its target, Peter was already upon him and had thrown a fist against his solid body. The beast shifted from his position a few inches back. The beast was able to avoid all of the spears thrown by the two. "They say heroes arrive at the last second," Fex said, with his hands twitching, holding the strings using all of his strength. At first, she thought that Fex had saved her, but on closer inspection, a strange purple shadow substance could be seen around it. From the corner of her eye, she could see a black hair boy pulling and twitching off to the side. Sia thought, wasn't he a level 1? As the beast saw its bladed arm being wrapped around by a strange shadow substance, while also being pulled by the strings, it wondered which one was affecting it more. A whisper was suddenly heard in Peter's ear. "Go join the others," Quinn said. "You've fought enough, and if you get hurt again, who knows if you will survive." Peter looked to his side and saw Quinn standing there. He had already equipped all of his beast gear equipment before coming over ready for a battle. "If you are in trouble, I won't hesitate to sacrifice myself," Peter said as he walked off to where the others were. "New quest received. Defeat the king of the underground city, King Tyr Beast Lickmorn. The town has been left behind, and in its empty place the beasts began to take over. Amongst the many, eventually a single creature took over, calming the seat and the title of the king. The others do his bidding as he protects the treasure located in the tower. Quest reward question." What interested Quinn about this strange quest was, for the first time, it seemed to inform a little bit about how the creature came to be. The beast was no longer curious about the strange shadow and strings, and pulled its arm back out of the shadow. Seeing this, Quinn quickly returned it to himself. There was one great advantage to them being underground. Quinn's shadow powers were stronger. "I need to help them," Vorden said. 70% of energy weapon has been created." Whatever Logan was doing, it looked like it still wasn't ready yet, and he couldn't join the fight. "Logan, do you mind if I touch you?" Vorden asked. Part of the suit that was covering the arm shifted upward as the suit broke down into hundreds of little spiders, and they did a handshake. With that, Vorden started to move. His aim was never to use Logan's ability, but only the MC cells that came with it. They would be able to combine the other abilities, making a spirit spear above a level 8 ability. Fax knew that none of his mind control and charm-like abilities would work on such a powerful creature, which meant they would have to deal with it the old-fashioned way. "Ah!" Fex shouted as he charged in. "Quinn, I'll attack and you cover me with the shadow." Although Quinn didn't agree with the plan, it was already too late as Fex charged in. While charging forward, Fex threw out blood swipes. Seeing this beast, they swung its hand blades at such an incredible speed it looked like it had managed to create its wind strike pressure that clashed with the blood swipes. Using the shadow, Quinn blocked some of the attacks, while also using the blood swipe of his own. The two of them continued to attack while pushing forward. It took the two of them using their blood swipes, including Quinn using his shadow, to match the speed of attacks coming from the King Tyr beast, and currently they were at a stalemate. Although they were able to match the power and speed of the King Tyr's attacks, they couldn't keep this up forever. In a way, using the blood-type attack drained their life force, and they would eventually run out of energy. "Quinn, charge in!" Fex shouted. "Blood shield!" A wide barrier of blood was lifted from the ground, blocking the incoming attacks. Quinn didn't hesitate and went off to the side. Windwalk activated. Using his extra speed from his intermediate boots, he tried charging in from the side. Blood crescent kick. It was too risky to get in close. It would notice Quinn by then. Even with the attacks coming towards it, it did nothing to block them. The two attacks had landed on the beast, yet not a mark was left on it. That was one of my most powerful attacks. There was only one thing left for Quinn to try. Flash step. In the middle of his preparation for the strike, the tree root extended arm had turned around and extended, following Quinn's position. Flash step. Quinn tried to execute the flash step, but for the first time he was too slow. The blade pierced through him easily, and now he was attached to the beast via its extended root arm. 60 of 80 HP. Fex, using his great speed, had managed to get within striking distance of the beast. An uppercut fist encased in blood was aiming towards the beast's belly. It was an attack Quinn had never seen before. It was also the strongest attack that Fex had, combining his martial arts with his vampire skills. "You damn tree fell!" he shouted as he plunged his fist right into the center of its belly. Vibrations and pressure of wind came out from the attack, and the beast moved a foot back as it slightly curved and arched its back forward. The beast stood upright and lifted its arm that was attached to Quinn. The two were lifted high, a few meters up in the air, as it used a strong force, slamming him down into one of the buildings off to the side. The building crumbled down on top of Quinn's body as he was thrown down. Most of his bones had been broken, and it was painful to even lift his body. 12 of 80 HP. Blood bank activate. He had no choice, and needed to use the blood bank to heal most of the serious wounds. As his body started to recover, he watched Fex amazingly dodge the beast's fast attacks. The fight continued, and a pool of blood could be seen underneath his 2 feet. The wounds were taking a toll on him as he started to slow down. In the middle of the fight, Fex started to lose hope. Even if he was faster, more skillful, it meant nothing. His strongest attack was unable to hurt the beast. Fex continued to dodge. In the middle of his thoughts, a strange green beam of light could be seen from his side. "Duck!" Instinctively, Fex reacted to the words and ducked his body. The green beam of light carried on moving forward and went straight through the beast's body. "Energy weapon has been completed." "Looks like it was a success," Logan said. For the first time during the fight, black blood was trickling down from the wound. For the first time since the fight had started, the king-tier beast had finally bled, although Fex was unaware of what had happened. Quinn, who had emerged from the rubble, managed to catch everything with his own 2 eyes. Quinn was still injured, his wounds were worse than usual, and even with the use of the blood bank, his body would take a while to heal. "Logan," Quinn thought. "Engage! Maximum system output," Logan said as he thrust his fist forward. The Qatar-like weapon suddenly grew longer. The green energy extended and went right through the beast's solid body. "Fex, I'm going to need your help," Logan said as he pulled out the energy blade from the beast. Suddenly, the beast's attention was on Logan. The beast went in for an attack from above, and Logan went to block with the energy blade, but when Fex looked at them both, it looked like watching a tortoise and hare race against each other. Logan was too slow. Seeing this, using his last bit of energy, Fex pivoted and shifted himself using all his strength to dash forward. "Kill the damn thing!" Fex screamed as more blood was dripping down his arm. "Energy blade, maximum output!" Logan shouted, and at the same time, one of the energy blades seemed to respond. It grew twice in size, and Logan slashed down with all his strength. It went through the beast's side, and the sound of something falling to the ground was heard. The green jade-like arm had been detached from its body, and black blood was now pouring out from the wound. "What is that?" Sia asked, amazed at what was happening. "I've never seen a weapon like that before," Layla said. "I've seen one of these before, or to be more precise, I learned about this before. It's another way to use the beast crystal that was discontinued by the military." "Discontinued? But why?" Sia asked. "As you can see, by using crystals as a form of raw energy, one can create something called an energy blade. The problem is that all of its energy is coming from the crystal, and it needs a constant output to support it. Once all the energy from the crystal has been used, the weapon will disappear. Because of these reasons, the military decided that it was much more practical to use the crystal core to create beast weapons rather than energy weapons." "It looks like the attack was a success," Logan said. With the black blood dripping from the beast's wound, it retreated for the first time, leaping back. Fex wanted to chase after the thing, but when he took a step forward, his wound seemed to have gotten the better of him. He went down to one knee, stopping himself from collapsing on the floor. "I'm more hurt than I thought." There was no point for Logan to chase it either. If he was to chase the beast, he wouldn't catch up to the thing in a million years. Suddenly, the beast's wound started to bleed less. It looked like some vine-like structures were starting to cover over the wound. Next from the wound, a little stump was starting to grow. "Am I imagining things, or is that thing getting smaller?" Layla asked, still looking from the side of the street. "You're right," Peter replied. The group wasn't imagining things. As the stump started to grow, it looked like it was forming another hand. At the same time, the beast was getting smaller in size. "Why don't you lie back down?" a voice said from his side, as he felt a hand touch his shoulder. "Quinn? But how?" Fex asked. "We can talk about that later," Quinn replied while handing the flask back to Fex. "Take it, heal up." It was tempting for Fex, but in the end, he refused again. "No, Quinn, not to be rude, but you're too slow to go against something like this. You keep it." "Don't worry about that," Quinn said as he walked forward. "Are you sure you would like to add all 6 points to agility?" "Points added. 26 plus 4 agility." When Quinn said these words, Fex felt his confidence. "Who are you, really? Is this the difference between the Punishers and the rest of us?" So far, Fex had multiple guesses about who Quinn was, but all of them seemed to be missing the mark. Still, Fex went off to the side and leaned up against the building wall. Ham, who had been flying and hovering in the air for most of the time, came swooping down. "Ham, if I don't come back from this, I want you to go back to the others. Don't stay here," Fex ordered. "What do you mean?" Ham replied. "I know the wounds are bad, but you should eventually heal from this, right?" As Ham said those words, he started to look at the wounds, but from the multiple cuts that were mainly on his upper body and arms, blood was still seeping out. "Master, are you doing this on purpose?" Fex didn't reply. "And what about the other vampire? If I return, do you want me to inform them about him?" Ham asked. Both Logan and Quinn now stood a few meters apart from the smaller version of the king-tiered beast that they were up against. "Logan, I want you to stay behind me. When I give the call, I want you to attack with all that you have," Quinn said. The beast had waited long enough, instead of charging in as it usually did. It decided to swing out its bladed arm and stretch it out from the side. Right now, Quinn was standing directly in front of Logan. With this attack, it was clear that its target was Logan. "You're not the only one that can do something like that." Quinn threw a blood swipe and then grabbed it quickly with his shadow. He had made his shadow scythe. He swung it down from above, hoping to hammer it down before it reached Logan. Bang! Like a hammer coming down on a nail. The scythe managed to knock the tree root arm, pinning it to the ground. "That attack wasn't that strong last time," Fex said, seeing this. I just... Sia was at a loss for words. They were all monsters. "Can you do something like that?" Sia asked Layla. So far, she seemed to be the only normal one in the group. "As I said, they saved your life earlier. These guys are amazing." As she said those words, she too wished she would be able to take part in the fight, rather than stand by the side. Seeing that the beast was targeting Logan and not him, Quinn knew he needed to do something. Windwalk activated. Activating his boots, he dashed forward and traveled at a speed that had never been achieved by him before. In an instant, he had nearly covered the entire distance, and was now directly in front of the beast. Punching the beast as hard as it could in the stomach, Quinn was hoping to make some sort of impact, but it didn't even budge. As its other hand retracted back, it started swinging away, attacking him in the same way as it did with Fex. Only the result this time was different. Every strike was avoided. This speed! Did he hide his strength? Just how? Fex was now even more confused than before. Bloodhammer was still the strongest skill in Quinn's arsenal, but it took quite a long time to perform. However, the hammer strike, with his increased speed, could be performed fast enough. He just needed to know how to land the attack. Right now, he was facing a humanoid-type beast. Not only that, but it had some level of intelligence as well. With this in mind, Quinn threw out a punch from above. Using his speed, he threw out one after another. The first attack was blocked, and when the beast saw the second one, it twisted its body slightly to avoid the blow. Then, something strange happened. It had blocked one punch and dodged the other, yet a third hand had come out and hit the beast right on its temple of its rounded head. "Looks like the phantom punch is a success," said Quinn with a smile. Quinn wasn't so sure if it would work, but it was obvious that it worked, and was incredibly useful in the battle. The standoff between the two continued, with Quinn avoiding most of the blows cleanly. Once again, another blow landed, this time on the beast's neck, just above its chest. "Again? Is the beast starting to slow down?" Sia thought. But watching closely, Fex could see that the beast hadn't slowed down at all. Its movements were still as fast as ever, so what was happening? "It's got to be the phantom punch. I can't think of anything else. He's mixing it with the ordinary jabs and hooks. But who taught him the phantom punch, and when?" Even with all these points, and even if Quinn did have a teacher that was in the school, it didn't explain the crazy amount of time it had taken him to learn such a skill. Now, Fex was frightened. The punches continued to descend like a waterfall. "I was wrong," Sia said. "I can't believe I thought he was useless. I'm sorry, Layla. I now understand why you got mad." As Layla watched Quinn, even she hadn't expected something like this from him. although the tides had turned in the fight, with Quinn being able to attack the beast several times. It did not affect it whatsoever. The blows didn't leave any wounds or marks, and it had barely moved from its original position due to Quinn's attacks. He must be doing something, Quinn thought. Otherwise, why would the beast attempt to block the attacks? Still, he wasn't doing enough damage. Looks like I have to use the hammer strike after all, Quinn thought. Another phantom punch was delivered to the stomach. As the beast went to block the attack, a flash step was performed, and Quinn was now standing directly behind the beast. The movements of the hammer strike had started, and the beast attempted to turn around. As it did, its movement slowed down, and its feet got stuck in the place where it was standing. It hadn't noticed that during the fight, Quinn had moved his shadow down to the beast's feet. Holding it in place, the plan was never to keep the beast there. He knew it wouldn't hold it back long enough, but it was enough time for him to perform the hammer strike. Placing his foot down, he pulled one arm back and snapped the other one out, hitting the beast right in the center. For the first time, it lifted into the air, and when it landed, the beast stumbled, struggling to stand on its 2 feet. "Attack now!" Quinn ordered. "Did I wait too long?" Vorden said as he watched from a window up high. But right now, Vorden could tell what had happened to the beast. It was now in rage mode. With this, the maximum amount of energy from the crystal inside them would pump around their body. Beasts rarely went into this mode, due to the fact they could only go into it once, if all the energy from the crystal was used up while in rage mode. They would die and no longer exist. The other problem was, if a beast was killed while it was in rage mode, the crystal obtained from it would be useless. The Qatar continued to thrust forward. Seeing this, the beast knocked the weapon away, shattering it, as its attack collided against the weapon. Lifting its legs out, it extended like a fast piston, hitting Logan in the stomach. Logan was flung back in the air and was thrown several feet down the street. As he was chucked through the air, several of the spiders that made up the suit seemed to fall onto the ground as well. Fex, seeing this, was now sure. He had made the right decision. Slowly his body was starting to change. His muscles were bulging, his skin shrinking, and his hair was falling off from the top of his head. Ham flew away from his master, looking back at what Fex had become. He had a sad look on his face. "So you did transform." Borden had the best view of what was going on down below. He and Rayton had switched places, and Rayton was ready to throw the spirit spear. Just before doing so, Rayton informed Vorden about something. With the use of MC cells from both Logan and Sia, Vorden right now had one of the strongest support abilities out there. As he continued to watch from above, his heart started to sink. It was because there was something else down there with them that had brought back bad memories. Fex, who was leaning up against one of the buildings, was no longer there, or at least was no longer himself. Instead, the sight of what was known as a bloodsucker was there instead. "Quinn, behind you!" Vorden shouted. Quinn had his eyes dead set ahead. As he turned his head, he could see a bald, muscle-bound creature. The claws on its hands had widened. If it wasn't for the clothes that it was wearing, Quinn would never have known it was Fex. "What is that?" Quinn said. "Don't you remember?" the system said. "He has turned into a bloodsucker." "Did he do this willingly?" Quinn asked. "Perhaps for a vampire to turn into a bloodsucker, they must have an immense amount of thirst," the system explained. "My guess is, when he was wounded by the beast, he suppressed his healing abilities, allowing the blood to continue to drain from his body. Vampires aren't often taught this, since a bloodsucker doesn't even see its kind as a friend, which would suggest he is an important figure, perhaps the son of one of the vampire's heads." Although the explanation was interesting for Quinn, he didn't have much time to think about it. He looked to his left, he looked to his right, waiting for one of them to make their first movement. At the same time, the bloodsucker and beast dashed forward. "Damn it, Shadow Cloak!" Quinn said. From his feet, the shadow rose, and suddenly Quinn had vanished from their sight. As Quinn hurried to escape from the area, the two of them clashed in the center of the street. The bloodsucker swiped its claw, while the beast threw out its balded arm. Instead of going over to where the others were, Quinn decided to stay quite close to the fight. In the back of his mind, there was one thing he kept thinking about: the quest. While the beast was in its rage mode, there was only one attack that could do any type of damage, and that was the Bloodhammer. The only question was how. How would he get the last hit? The fight continued between the bloodsucker and the king-tier beast. When a vampire turns into a bloodsucker, their health, or in Quinn's case HP, decreases. Their wounds would also no longer heal. It was a starved state for vampires, a mode that allowed them to grow stronger to consume blood, but also acted as a double-edged sword. However, slowly one of them was starting to get an edge, and it looked like it was the bloodsucker. Quinn planned to inch closer and closer and try to get behind the king-tier beast. Running forward and around the two, he wanted to get behind the fight. As he took a step to the side, suddenly a large claw-like fist came out towards him. The fist was briefly stopped by the shadow, and when he looked at where it had come from, it was from the bloodsucker. It could sense where I was even with the shadow cloak on, Quinn thought. Luckily, I already thought that something like this might happen and prepared my shadow just in case. Quinn quickly stepped back and went to his position before. It looked like Fex really could no longer differentiate between friend and foe. For now, Quinn's MC points had reached 0. 0 of 100 MC. The only thing was, now the others could see him as well. "Quinn, what are you doing? Leave it to the two monsters," Vorden said from above. The beast had done the same, as last time after its arm had been ripped out. It wanted to take a few steps back and start to recover, but the bloodsucker wasn't going to let it go. When the beast dashed backwards, the bloodsucker chased it. With a swipe to its chest, the red roots were split open, and the black blood squirted out once again. Obsessed with getting the quest reward for killing the thing, Quinn dashed forward. Seeing this, the bloodsucker leaped in the air, and it looked like it would close the distance between the two with one jump. The others expected Quinn to attempt to dodge, but instead, he started to go through the motion of the hammer strike, timing everything perfectly when the bloodsucker jumped. Just when it was about to land, Quinn performed a flash step. Avoiding the attack, he appeared in front of the king-tier beast. "Bloodhammer!" The beast was already weak, and using all the strength he could, he snapped back his arm and with the punch, released the power of the level 2 blood spray, performing a bloodhammer. Carefully, Quinn had hit the same spot where the bloodsucker had clawed out the roots, protecting its upper body. Unlike before, the attack seemed to go through. "Quest completed. Defeat the king-tier beast." Looking at Fex, a large, thick blue spirit spear was stuck inside the bloodsucker. "Quinn, I can't produce another one like that. Finish him now if you can." A voice was heard shouting from down the street. Looking behind the bloodsucker, Quinn could see Vorden running towards him. The spear had come from him. "Kill Fex?" Quinn said. No, he couldn't do that. It was only because of him that they were able to kill the king-tier beast in the first place. While watching what was going on, the girl started to hear a few voices from somewhere. "So, just a little further ahead and the beast you encountered before should be here?" a confident young voice said. "Yes, sir. Every time we wanted to go explore the tower, the beast would come out and stop us," a female voice said. Down the street, a group of travelers was walking together. It was easy to spot them, since each of them had a sticky light patch on them. It allowed the area around the person to be bathed in light. They were the group of travelers who had reported to the military, updating them about the exploration, a female voice said. "It looks like there are other people here. Heck, they're kids, aren't they?" The group quickly rushed over to the students and was shocked at the state. The students looked quite young. They were a group of 5. All of them had beast gear covering their bodies. The female was the first to approach them, named Lily, who also had a bow on her back. Only hers looked a level higher than what Layla had. Then there were a couple of bald twins. None of them held a weapon in their hand, but their legs were covered in thick boots, while the rest of their legs had light armor. It was a strange sight. They were called Rock and Pock. There was another man who seemed to be staying by the youngest-looking person's side. He had a shield on his back, with a sword sheathed at his waist. The man looked a little older than the others. It was as if he had been assigned to look after the whole team, but after listening to them for a while, Layla quickly figured out that he wasn't the leader. It was the young man standing next to them. The young man had brown, wavy hair that was tied up in a ponytail. His weapon of choice was a spear, placed on his back. It was as long as him in length. The most noticeable thing about him was the air around him. "I'm the leader, Andre," the young man said. "What happened here? Do you guys get attacked?" Loud footsteps could be heard in the shadows, where the team had come from. A figure slowly came out of the darkness. "Another beast, and it looks like a strong one," Sia exclaimed in a panic. But the group of travelers didn't look panicked at all. The strange beast looked like a lion, and was the same size as one. Its muscles could be seen as well, but on its bottom half, instead of a single tail, it carried several, each with a small flame at the end. The lion approached Andre's side and started to lick him in the face. "A tame beast?" Layla said. "That's right," Lily replied. Andre, the leader of the group, had a beast by his side, and he could very well control it, which meant that he belonged to the Bree family. Depending on their level and control of the ability, it allowed them to tame higher and lower-level beasts. The Brees were incredibly talented when it came to fighting, but while taming a stronger beast, one would have to show it was stronger than what it was trying to tame. With their incredible fighting skills and strong beasts, they were able to work together, creating a powerful force, and eventually climbed up the ladder to be a part of the Big Four. Trying to think quickly on his feet, Quinn took out the flask. However, even before Quinn was able to do that, a strange lion-like beast had jumped in between Vorden and the bloodsucker. As it pounced towards the bloodsucker, the flames on its tails grew brighter. The two of them clashed in the center, claw against paw, and surprisingly, it was outpowered and pushed back. "Looks like you're going to need my help with this one, Cookie." The young man Andre held out his spear and stood by his lion's side. The two bald twins had appeared, one by Vorden's side and the other by Peter's side. "You guys did well to survive against such a thing," one of them said. "But you can now leave it to us," the other said, ending the first one's sentence. The twins were insistent, and before they could even reply, they were already trying to pull both Vorden and Peter out of the fighting area. The two boys were taken out of the area, and now Andre and Andy felt like they could fight with no worry. "It looks like this beast has some level of intelligence," Andre said as he jumped up onto Andy's shoulder, before running on top of his shield and jumping right on the edge towards the beast. From the side, Cookie, the lion beast, pounced once again. The flames this time on its tail were, even more, brighter than before, and when they clashed, neither one of them fell back. The bloodsucker seemed to be slightly stronger, but Andre wanted it held there for a moment. As he thrust his spear forward, he was able to hit the creature right between the ribs. Fex began to scream in pain as the pointy object was jammed into him. "Get away from my friend!" A strange robotic and deep voice was heard. As the group turned to look at the speaker, all they could see was a human figure dressed in a black suit, wearing a demon mask that was covering its bottom jaw, while its eyes were white and shaped like a demon. During the fight with the king-tier beast, he hadn't done this because they needed Fex in his bloodsucker form. What he didn't expect to happen was that the small group of travelers would be able to overpower the bloodsucker. After seeing him get stabbed in the ribs and howling in pain, Quinn had enough. Before jumping in to help Fex, Quinn had made the quick decision to put all of his points into the charm stat. 22 charm points. This unlocked the next tier in his charm, and Quinn could tell that it would be different when he used it next. With no time to lose, Quinn needed to reveal himself from the shadows, targeting his blood swipe at the leader, Andre. "Why did you attack me? We're trying to get rid of this beast," Andre said, annoyed at the strange figure. Looking at Andre's fight against Fex, Quinn could tell he was strong. With the little HP he currently had, on top of no longer having any MC points to use his shadow ability, Quinn didn't want to do anything stupid, like confront Andre and Andy. He quickly popped the lid of the flask, and straight away he was able to smell the sweet aroma of blood coming from it. "I hope this works," Quinn said. And just like that, Fex turned his head, catching the same smell as Quinn. Now, this was the hard part. Immediately Quinn started to run off in the direction of the tower, and Fex chased after him. Both of them ran down the street into the darkness. Both of them were now invisible, since they were no longer in the sticky lights that Logan had shot on the street. Quinn started running at full speed, activating his windwalk boots, but he knew it would be useless with the great speed of the bloodsucker. The only thing he could do was run into buildings to slow Fex down. In one of the abandoned buildings, there was an empty large room. He quickly placed the flask on the floor and ran aside. He was still unsure if Fex would continue chasing after him or go after the flask. When Fex reached the flask on the floor, he immediately picked it up, using its clawed hands. He shook the flask and poured the contents into his mouth without allowing a drop of it to touch the floor. "Well, I'm glad that's over with," Quinn said. While Fex was busy going back to his regular self, Quinn looked out the window and at the tower. "I wonder what's in there. Who was that guy?" one of the twins said as he accepted Andre's hand to stand up from the ground. "I'm not sure. I haven't seen that ability before either," Andre replied. "Most likely an original that's on this planet or an independent traveler." "Hey, I think you better come and take a look at this," Andy shouted to the others. The three of them prodded along, and when their eyes made contact with what Andy was looking at, the two twins nearly keeled over from the shock. That's the king-tiered beast we fought against before, the twins shouted. They had fought several times against the king beast as a team without Andre, so they knew the strength of the beast. What do you think happened? Andy asked. Andre then knelt beside the beast and started fleshing out certain parts of the beast's cadaver. They knew what he was doing. He was looking for the beast's crystal. It was located where the human heart would be, slightly to the left of the middle of the chest. The extracted crystal didn't look common at all. It was clearer and wasn't as murky and didn't radiate any light at all. I'm surprised. There's still a crystal inside? How come it wasn't extracted? One of the twins said. Perhaps it was killed recently, Andy replied. Perhaps the creature and the strange man from before were the ones that killed it? Andy said. They were the only ones here at the time. No, Andre replied. There were others here as well. While saying this, Andre looked in the direction of Vorden and the others. On the cold floor of an abandoned building, Fex could be seen lying on the floor. Quinn didn't want to wake him up. He had gone far and beyond for the safety of others. Maybe vampires aren't as bad as you say, Quinn said to the system. Thankfully, Quinn was able to hide his identity using the costume and mask Logan had created for him. Also, Fex was unrecognizable as the bloodsucker. He had his uniform on, but in the fight with the king-tiered beast, it was badly damaged and had been rendered unrecognizable. The travelers looked like they were trying to help Vorden and Peter. Once Fex woke up, Quinn would go and meet up with them before they left the cave. But before all of that, there was still one thing he wanted to check out before leaving. The tower. Finally, with Fex sleeping away, Quinn had a chance to look at all the rewards, other than the EXP and the blood ability increase he had received. With the increase in blood skills, all his attacks related to blood skills had gotten stronger, but the most impressive of them all was the blood bank. It was now able to store double the amount of blood at 200 milliliters. Quest reward, unlock one ability skill. It seemed to be related to the shadow skill. New skill, Shadow Eater unlocked. He would look at the details of the skill later. He was a bit upset when he found out that he wasn't able to grab the king-tiered beast crystal, but in return, it seemed like the system had given him something else. Small blood crystal 1 obtained. That is a very rare item. Although you have no use for it now, I suggest you store it in your system for safekeeping, the system stated, refusing to elaborate. But hearing the system say such a thing was precious, it still placed a smile on Quinn's face. The last two notifications were the strangest. Quest, reach level 20 for next evolution. Reward, next evolution Vampire Noble. Additional rewards will be revealed once rank has been reached. Quest, part 1 of 2. The king has been defeated, and now the tower is left unprotected. Search the tower and discover what treasure it was trying to protect. Suddenly, he heard someone groaning behind him. It looked like Fex was waking up. What the hell happened? Fex said, looking around at where he was. He then looked down and noticed the flask on the floor. Images of his transformation into Bloodsucker appeared in his head, and he remembered everything that happened. You saved me? Fex said. Come on, I can explain while we're making our way over, Quinn replied. Over where? To the tower. The group of travelers had regrouped and were heading toward the students. Lily had been watching the fight carefully and wanted to join in, but she knew her duty was to stay by the students' side in case anything happened. As she saw the two twins walking over groggily, she rushed over to their side. Are you both all right? I saw what happened. Who was that guy? She asked as she gave her shoulder to one of the bald twins. That's what we want to know as well, Andre replied. You students, your uniform, I assume you are from one of the military bases out on an outing. Second year, right? We're first years. What is the military thinking sending in first years? Have the times gotten that desperate? Well, if you look at the structures around us, perhaps, Andre said. I wanted to ask you guys, what happened? The king-tier beast on the ground. Did you see what happened to it? And do you know what that other creature was? And last of all, what about the strange demon-masked man? Peter, Vorden, and Layla wanted to keep their mouths shut. That king-tier beast, it was killed by me. Another voice interrupted before Sia was able to finish her sentence. Logan, are you okay? Layla asked. I'll live, Logan replied. It took everything I had with the help of my friends here, but we were finally able to kill the king-tier beast. As for the strange person who appeared at the end, your guess is as good as ours. He only appeared when you guys saw him as well. Andre started to think about Logan's words. They were convincing, Also, it was hard to imagine why the students would even lie in this type of situation when they had seen firsthand that the creature was trying to kill them. On the other hand, there was also Sia. She didn't know who the masked man was while the others did, but what she did know was that Fex was the one who had turned into a monster, and Quinn was nowhere to be seen after killing the king tier. She wasn't completely stupid. Quinn had been using the red aura attacks, and the masked man had done the same. Most likely Quinn was trying to protect Fex. "Okay, I've decided then," Andre said. "Let's take them back to the shelter." The students and the group of travelers started to head out of the small town. While doing so, Vorden and Layla would constantly look around, hoping to find Quinn and Fex. "I hope you bring me a nice souvenir to work on from that tower, Quinn," Logan thought. "Logan, I don't think I can hold it in for much longer." "What? If you want to go to the toilet, just go. It's too dark here anyway. Nobody will see anything." "No, it's not that." Hearing those words, Logan knew straight away what Peter meant. He was hungry. Before heading off to the tower, Quinn made sure of two things. The first thing was that his MC points were fully restored. The second thing was that he was fully equipped with all his equipment. Of course, that included his suit, which was made by Logan. There was no more blood in the flask. Fex had consumed all of it, and in doing so, it looked like his wounds were healing too. The armor that Logan created gave him some additional defense. Although it wasn't much, every little increment would help, and this was his reason for putting it on. "Are you all ready then?" Quinn asked Fex. "Quinn, wait!" Fex said as he rushed over and bowed down on one knee with his fist on the floor. "Whoa, what's this all about?" "I have to do this, please. Quinn, you saved my life. I remember everything that happened while I was the bloodsucker. You fought against those travelers and risked me chasing after you. Finally, you used the flask that I had given you to save me." This whole time, he had been getting closer to Quinn for one reason, to save his own back. If he was ever to be found out by his clan, then Fex's idea was to turn Quinn in as one of the shadow users, while Quinn had never thought about abandoning him. Fex no longer cared about how he was able to do it, or why he seemed to keep growing stronger. He had just had this feeling of guilt over his heart that he wanted to get rid of. "I'm on your side, Quinn." Quinn didn't know what to say. At the time, Quinn had only done what he felt was right. Fex had risked his life to save the whole group. What right did he have to die by the hand of strangers? Quinn didn't know why, but he naturally walked over to Fex and extended his hand. Fex, in return, naturally took it and lifted himself. "We're blood brothers from now on," Fex said with a smile. "We may not be related by blood, but I will treat you as a part of my family." "And I will do the same." After slowly creeping their way towards the tower, by going through buildings, rather than going down the open street towards the tower, it seemed like they hadn't seen a single beast on their way there. Is it the strange crystals from the top of the tower, or did the other beasts stay away from this place because of the king-tier beast? Quinn thought. The crystals shone brightly at the top and gave off a slightly blue hue to the area below it. "We can take some time to explore if you're worried." "What do you mean?" "The others would leave with those travelers. More than likely, they already know of an exit. I asked my little Ham to follow them from above. Once he knows where the exit is, he'll come and find me." "Ham, is that the little flying bull from earlier?" "Yeah, good name, right?" Ignoring Fex's last words, Quinn continued to walk up to the tower. In the middle of the door, there was a circular hole that seemed to go a few inches deep. "It's a lock," Fex said. "These doors, I've seen them in my castle before. They're impossible to open without some type of key or mechanism. They're meant to even withstand attacks from the vampire leaders." "Doesn't that mean there's something important here?" "Yeah, but I don't know what." Going up to the door, Quinn decided to try and give it a push using all his strength. He was half expecting it to do something, but as Fex had informed him, it didn't budge at all. "I told you it was pointless, man. Don't give up yet," the system said. "Do you remember that red blood crystal you received from defeating the king-tier beast? Why don't you place that on the door and see what happens?" He took out the crystal from his inventory and placed it in the strange hole inside the door. The gears shifted, and the door pulled inwards, opening a way up inside the tower. "Are you coming?" Ham was up in the air while looking down at the fairly large town. It was slowly following the group of students, along with the travelers, to see where they were heading. "I hope Master is all right," Ham said. "Peter, how long can you hold out? Until we get outside, I might be able to do something by then." Peter immediately looked up at Logan from his position. His eyes were starting to show a slight tint of red in them. "Okay, looks like you won't last that long." Finally, the group had reached one of the tunnels that led out of the city. While walking through the tunnels, Logan had come up with an idea. "So with all these tunnels, how do you guys know the way out? These tunnels are like a maze, and they either seem to loop with each other or all end up going back to the original town we just left from. In the end, we never found an exit, so we decided to create our own. In one of the tunnels, we marked ourselves." Logan had scanned the place before coming down, so he knew there was a space between the surface and the ground they were currently on, and was prepared for it. It was a sad thought, but some of the other students were consumed by the strange, plant-like beast. All Logan needed to do was to make them split up with the others and search through the tunnels for one of these dead students that Peter could feed on. Finally, the group exited the tunnel and entered another larger section with several more tunnels. The second they entered the room, though, Peter loudly screamed as if he was in pain. It seemed too sudden. By Logan's predictions, they should have had more time. Looking around the room, though, he soon spotted the cause. His theory was right. Some students had fallen to their deaths after being consumed by the plant because there were a couple of students in front of them. The smell and sight of the students had caused a reaction inside him. Not knowing what to do, Logan rushed towards Peter with his suit still on and picked him up from the ground. Peter remained motionless in the same position, not even moving his hands. He just kept groaning. Right now he was using every bit of energy and was concentrating on not lashing out and going toward the students. But even more so, he didn't want to bite his friend Logan, who was carrying him right now. Logan kept running with Peter on his shoulder, picking a tunnel at random. "Wait, what are you doing?" Lily shouted. The others had already gone over to inspect the other students to see if they were still alive and if there was anything they could do. Unaware of the commotion going on behind them, they only realized something was happening when Lily shouted out to them. "Wait!" Lily shouted out again, genuinely concerned for the two, so she decided to chase after them. Suddenly, Logan's hand had transformed into one of his blasters. He aimed it at the ceiling and blasted it away, causing the tunnel to crumble down, blocking the path between them. "We should go after them," Lily suggested. "No," Andre replied. "Couldn't you see it? The other student caused the tunnel to collapse on purpose. For now, it's best if we leave that mystery unsolved and head back to the base." The group continued to walk through the tunnels, while also instructing the students to look away from the dead bodies. "Why do you think they ran off?" Layla asked Borden. "If I was to guess, it would have something to do with Peter again. Logan wouldn't put his neck out on the line like that for no reason." "Do you think Logan will be okay? What if Peter gets hungry again and tries to eat Logan?" "Impossible. Trust me, by now you should have been able to tell. Logan is not the one to worry about if the two of them get into a fight. It's Peter." Although that might have been the case before, Logan had used up several of his trump cards in the fight against the King-tier beast. He was also a bit injured from the battle, and lastly, Quinn had grown stronger from the fight. That meant Peter had to as well.
Hi, Quinn here. Wondering what happens next? If you want to jump the queue and unleash all episodes, click on the link here and install the Pocket FM app.